a rally on TV. It was in New York. There was people that were wanting to protect the environment. They were wanting to protect the land, the water, the resources. And there were millions and millions and millions of them. There were lots of them. And I'm wondering, if you were asked to come, did you ask 10 more people to come with you so that there would be more people here? You know, the bigger the voice, the louder we are. And the government listens when there's more and more, when there's a lot of people. I was hoping, yes, I was hoping there would have been more people here. UAP, the unions, you know, you're the ones that protect other workers because your voices are strong. Your voices were really, really, really powerful because the unions were the ones that built this country. And if it wasn't for you, we'd probably be still working at $3 an hour, working as slaves like they do in other countries. But in Canada, at least we're a little bit better off. And thanks to the unions for doing that.
We wanted to speak out about on May Day is against C-51, the bill that would take away a lot of our democratic rights and criminalize a lot of dissent, and particularly it would target, it does target First Nations demonstrations and activism. So I just wanted to read a little bit about what Chief Matthew Kunkam, the Grand Chief of the Grand Council of the Crees and the Chair of the Cree Nation government, had to say in a statement that he wrote in the Globe and Mail earlier in April. And he states that Bill C-51, the Anti-Terrorism Act, has generated widespread uncertainty and concern. It fails to safeguard the dignity, human rights, and security of Indigenous peoples and individuals. It is inconsistent with good governance. Kunkam writes that the bill violates international human rights law, to which Canada is a party, and especially the December 2014 UN General Assembly resolution that member states must ensure that any measure taken to combat terrorism complies with all their obligations under international law, and in particular human rights. Security is a human right, he writes, and the security of Indigenous peoples in Canada has been undermined by the Canadian state's historic and continued criminalization of the legitimate struggles of the Indigenous peoples for their right in the name of security. It facilitates widespread abuses of Indigenous communities by government and third parties. So it's, of course, not only Indigenous people who are targeted by this legislation, it's all kinds of people who want to speak out about their rights, who want to speak out for change, who want to take to the streets and raise their voices. So on this day, on International Workers' Day, which is a day when historically workers and all people of all countries around the world have mobilized to defend the rights of workers and defend the rights of all, it's important to recognize that we need to stand up against Bill C-51. Thank you.
Hello, sisters and brothers and comrades. Welcome to May Day! I tell you, this day we need to celebrate. It holds a special meaning for me. It was 25 years ago today that I helped lead AUPE Local 6 on a 22-day illegal strike. 25 years ago. And you never forget those kind of struggles. You never forget. And this is our day when we share our history and our struggles with workers around the world. A day of recognition that the modern society and the modern economy we live in is built on the backs of workers' labor. But it's also a recognition that those workers do not share in the fruits and efforts of their labor. And that's why we need to stand up. We need to celebrate our strength and our solidarity and recommit our struggles to build a better world for all. And we owe this commitment to the generations of workers who came before us, fighting for the basic rights of workers and all humanity. We owe it to the current and future generations of workers to lead the way in the struggle against dictatorial governments and abusive bosses. Yeah. And we do this knowing that the universal struggle for equality and dignity is something we share with the working class worldwide. Yes, we are working class and we're proud. You know, and on this May Day, I want to also offer thanks on behalf of AUPE's entire membership. AUPE has been engaged in massive struggles with the government to fight for our basic collective bargaining rights, safe working conditions, our pensions, and our freedom of speech. And I know that you out there and many others have supported us in those struggles, and we would not have been victorious without your support. So thank you from AUPE to you. You know, and sharing that support and solidarity, that's what it means to be working class. The bonds of solidarity that link us from worksite to worksite, community to community, province to province, and nation to nation. And let's keep working hard and struggling to make those bonds of solidarity even stronger on May Day and every day. Solidarity, sisters and brothers!
What a difference a few months can make. I think some of you will remember it was only 18 months ago in bitter cold that we stood on these steps in front of this legislature opposing two pieces of legislation aimed directly at all of you. The first was Bill 46 that was designed to strip a large group of public sector workers of their right to bargain collectively. The second was Bill 45, a bill that was designed to impose ridiculous fines on workers for exercising their right to strike. Even the act of talking about strikes was criminalized by this particular piece of legislation. And then only a few months later, on another cold day, thousands of us gathered in the square in front of City Hall to protest this government's attack on public sector pensions. That was only a year ago. So 18 months ago, a year ago, we were under the heel of a conservative government that was determined not only to impose a right-wing agenda on public sector workers, but to rob working people in general of their basic rights, their rights to things like collective bargaining. This is the kind of government that we were facing only a year ago or 18 months ago. But today, as we gather in front of this House of Government, this House owned by the public of Alberta, today we have many things to celebrate. And they're things that have been won by people like you in our labor movement. So please, on this May Day, this is a day of celebration, not just for workers across the world, but this is a day for celebration for the workers of Alberta to look back at how much we've accomplished in this last year. Because you know what? That piece of legislation that was designed to strip us of our rights to bargain collectively, it's gone. And that piece of legislation that was designed to muzzle us and intimidate us, it's gone. And you know what's even better? The Premier, who brought us those two horrible anti-pieces of legislation, she's gone as well. And if those were the only things that we had to celebrate today, that would be good enough. That would be a good day for the labor movement here in Alberta. But today, we have even more to celebrate, not just looking backward, but looking forward as well. Because on this day, on this Workers' Day, I'm going to make a bold prediction. I'm going to predict that in 4 days, on May 5th, this House of Government will no longer be a Conservative House. It will be the People's House. I want to tell you about this opportunity, because this is an unprecedented opportunity. It's an historic opportunity. Because I want you to think back on the 44 long years of Conservative government in this province and what those 44 years have meant to working people in this province. Think about the 80s, under the governments of Peter Lougheed and Don Getty. They introduced labor legislation that stripped the right to strike from all workers in the provincial public sector. They also introduced legislation that dramatically tipped the playing field away from unions in the unionized construction sector in favor of union-busting employers. That's what Conservatives gave us in the 1980s. And then in the 1990s, we had continuation of the Getty government, and then of course we had Ralph Klein and his so-called Klein Revolution. And what did that bring us? An unprecedented attack on public sector workers and the services they provided. It brought us the Reagan Revolution, the Thatcher Revolution, brought here to Alberta, built on pillars of cutbacks, privatization, deregulation. It took a proud province and it laid us low. We're still struggling to recover from the devastation wrought in those years. That's what Conservative government in the 90s brought us. And then in the 2000s, what did it bring us? What did Conservative government bring working people in this province? Lower wages, more deregulation, more privatization, more handouts to corporate friends. That's what it brought us. And now here we are in 2015. In a year when we thought we would still be fighting the good fight, and we have fought the good fight, but when we've won many battles, but they've been defensive battles. Important battles nonetheless, but defensive battles to protect the things that we know are right, the things that we've won for our members and the community. But today, we're looking at more than a defensive victory. Over the next couple of days, I want us to do what we do best. As a labor movement, we know that our real strength as a movement, it doesn't lie in our bank accounts, it doesn't lie in our institutions. Our real strength lies in our members. They have the money, we have the many, and over the long haul, that's what makes the difference. And so today, and over the next 4 days, I want us to do what we do best, and that is to act collectively, because that is our strength. Our strength is in coming together, but not just coming together as a movement, but in acting together. And in the past, we've used that power that comes from collective action to fight against Bill 45, to fight against Bill 46, to stop Ralph Klein's third way, to make them blink, during things like the laundry workers' strike. Those have been defensive victories using our collective action. But today, brothers and sisters, we know what we have to do over the next couple of days. We need to mobilize our collective action. We need to come together. We need to work together to elect Alberta's first New Democrat government. So I'm just going to wrap up by saying this. We can't always put our faith in governments, but we know that this one has lost any opportunity to have the faith of the public. Let's put in a government that is elected by people, that is representing working people, that will listen to working people, and we have to keep them accountable, okay? Yeah. But let's put people in that legislature who will at least open a door and have an open ear to working people. That's our first priority. And with your help, with our energy and our enthusiasm, we're going to make this good year even better. Thank you in solidarity.
I am Carol Chapman. I'm president of Canadian Union of Public Employees, 3550, and we represent the support staff that work with Edmonton Public Schools. It's wonderful to be here today, again on May Day, a day of celebration and solidarity for workers around the world. This country should be very proud of our labor and union history. We have so many things to thank them for. Things like universal Medicare and unemployment insurance and little things like pension plans. With this new government's austerity plans, all of those types of things are always under attack. And I am part of one of the public sectors, education, in this province that is under attack. Today I want to talk about the future workers and leaders that we as public sector workers support in our schools in Alberta. I was in the legislature, Budget Day 2013, listening to them freeze funding for education at 2012 rates. And cutting all sorts of supports for our programs in our classrooms. Then on Budget Day 2014, here again, there's no increases. We're still frozen at 2012 rates, and again, no increases to any supports or restoration of any of the previous cuts. But at least they did decide to support the new students that are coming to our schools. Now we roll ahead to Budget 2015. Everything's still frozen, but this time we choose not to fund any of the new students in our districts, in our schools, and in our province. The province of Alberta last year had 558,000 students That's over 500,000 future workers and future leaders in our province. And our province is ignoring the fact that these are the people that are going to be taking care of us when we get old and doing all kinds of things. Of course, they're not too concerned because they're all going to have the money and their fat pensions to pay for all the services that the rest of us are not going to be able to afford. The school districts are being put in positions to make difficult choices about where to cut supports for kids, cleaning or maintaining the buildings, training for staff who are expected to work with student populations with diverse learning needs. This means that over 500,000 future workers and leaders in this province are at the mercy of the inadequate funding of this province. Alberta Education promotes the concept of community schools. That means students with learning or physical challenges are integrated into regular classrooms. Unfortunately, these special needs students will be in larger class sizes next year with little or no supports. We are the staff that see the pain and the loss and the suffering in these kids learning every day when they do not have the adequate supports in the classroom. Teachers working with larger classes and with additional special needs students will now more than ever need classroom support to meet the learning needs of these students. And that's where we, as support staff, education workers in this province, come into play. But you know what? We're probably not going to be there because there isn't enough money to fund the support for the kids. For the past number of years, the schools have been working with bare-bone budgets. Now they're expected to prepare survival budgets. Public education cannot continue to be underfunded without consequences. Public services cannot continue to be underfunded without consequences. Our future workers and leaders deserve better. Our future workers and learners need to learn in clean and safe buildings and in classrooms that are not overcrowded. They need teachers who are not burnt out, and they need supports to ensure every student in every classroom will learn and succeed, not just survive. We need our students to grow up to be successful adults who make valuable contributions to society. We need our students to be able to contribute to the growing province of Alberta because they have learned math skills, reading skills, research skills, social skills, and on and on and on in school in order to be able to be our future workers and leaders. I'd like to thank the 19 school boards that had enough guts to stand up to this government and challenge the lack of funding, lack of sustainable, adequate funding for our schools and our kids. I want to thank the parents who often feel alone when advocating supports for their children. Our future workers and leaders need every voice in this province to remind the Alberta government now and in the future that our public services need a reliable source of funding that is adequate and sustainable. This province and our future leaders cannot depend on the volatile resource revenues that yo-yo during the boom and bust Alberta economies. The province of Alberta needs a government that is prepared to invest in the futures of over 500,000 students, our future workers and leaders, and in the future of this province. We have an opportunity on Tuesday to choose representatives who value our kids and respect our values. And we have an opportunity every day after that to remind them of the consequences of their decisions. I can only hope that our voices will be heard and that public education, public service, and the future workers and leaders in this province will be treated as a critical investment in the future of Alberta. Happy May Day, everybody.
The exploitative labor practices of transnational and multinational corporations in their never-ending quest to maximize their profits are becoming the norm for all types of employers. Temporary foreign workers are the ultimate precarious workforce. They have no or very few prospect for protection and for becoming permanent resident. They endure low wage and difficult working conditions. Worst of all, their temporary status bars them from fighting for their rights or join unions who can help them do so. These works for employers who want to cut their labor costs. These employers are working hard to make sure that the wages are driven down. That's why this International Workers' Day, we should be reminded that Canada is part of the global trafficking of labor. They benefit from cheap labor force from other countries coming to Canada and dividing the working class. This Canada Day, let me reiterate the call for the original International May Day, and that is an injury to one is an injury to all. An injury to a Canadian worker is an injury to all workers. An injury to a migrant worker is an injury to the working class of the world. Have a good International Workers' Day.